today we're going to look at the social divisions in America from 1865 until 1890. So we'll be able to describe the divisions in society, we'll be able to explain how these different groups changed and developed, and hopefully we'll be able to say whether America really was united in this period. America changes dramatically from 1865 to 1890. It recovers from the Reconstruction period and it enters to what Mark Twain describes as the Gilded Age. It has many decades of political corruption and scandal. It's got the dominance of big business, and it's really tackling another big problem, and that's immigration in this period. We've got the presidencies of Lincoln, the Reconstruction period of Johnson, we've got radical Reconstruction under the period of Grant, and we've got the Compromise of Hayes, the untimely death of Garfield, his replacement Chester, and then we've got the election of Cleveland and lastly Harrison from this period. And within all of these presidencies there is significant changes to America, as the next image demonstrates. We can see in Lincoln's election victory in 1861 the state of the United States, the dominance of the East and the South, and the territories that exist in the Midwest. They are going to be converted, as the image of Harrison's victory in the next image clearly demonstrates. We've got, in this period from 1865 to 1890, new territories becoming states. We've got the division of other states in this period as well. And America needs people, and that's one of its biggest calling cards. It needs immigrants. And so from 1865 to 1890 we have a huge influx in the number of immigrants. From 1861 to 1870, 2.3 million. From 71 to 80, 2.9 million. From 81 to 1890, 5.2 million. And this really does change American society dramatically. Immigrants come from all over the world and they settle in different locations. Irish immigrants, for example, tend to prefer urban areas and the cities, whereas the German immigrants tend to settle in the Midwest and in rural areas. We can see from the next slide just where they're coming from. So as you can see, there's a predominance of German migrants in this period, rising to 1.4 million in 81 to 1890. Great Britain, including England and Scotland, was contributing significant numbers. We've got the Irish immigrants, we've got Italian immigrants coming in at the turn of the 1880s to the 1890s, and they do settle in different areas. And we've also got the decline of Chinese immigration that we'll look at in this period. So the pull factors, well, there's empty land. America is a land of promise. America is the land of the free. We've got the Statue of Liberty that guards the harbour that really attracts immigrants to it. So it's the economic impact, the economic pull factors that play a big part. America is ever expanding in its industries and it needs labour, it needs people to work. And so that's one of the main reasons why immigrants come, but it isn't the only one. We've got huge demographic shifts. As previously mentioned, Scandinavian and German settlers chose rural areas, whereas Irish immigrants choose urban areas. Districts of big cities become influx of immigrants. So you have Chinatown, Italian sections, Irish areas of different American cities in this period. And remember, America is now a country of cities, not just of towns and small holdings. How does this sort of flare up in the period? Well, one best example is the Yellow Peril. Chinese immigrants first came to America in the gold rush in California, but predominantly huge numbers came to work on the railroads. They were paid and wanted to be paid half wages compared to other workers, so they were therefore a competition to American-born workers. And if you're a railroad company, it's a no-brainer to hire somebody that is half the price. It leads to huge anti-Chinese riots in 1877, and it puts so much pressure that American government Congress has to pass a law prohibiting all Chinese immigration for 10 years, and it becomes known as the Chinese Exclusion Act. And it was actually only supposed to be for 10 years, but it was approved constantly, and it was repealed in 1943. So you can see the extent to which the Yellow Peril existed, and Americans chose them as an alien group to attack and vilify. The reality was that the Chinese workers ethically were hardworking, were cheap, they caused very few disturbances in comparison to others, and so it was an example of discrimination against where they came from. It took until Hayes' warning in 1879 about the present Chinese invasion, and then therefore the Act was passed in 1882. We've got social divisions amongst farmers and workers as well, and we'll delve deeper into the Granger movement and the Knights of Labour in a minute. And we've got another area of social division, so you can see how disharmonious America was in this period. You've got female suffrage. It first came to light in 1848 at the Seneca Falls Convention, where the feminists start to launch their campaign for women's rights and for the women's right to vote. They were very active in the temperance movement, and we're going to look at that in the causes of prohibition in later series. Two examples are Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. By 1890, we now have the unified creation of the National American Women's Suffrage Association, sometimes abbreviated to NORSA, and they're working in this period to create better rights for American women. And it takes until 1920, remember, for American women to get the vote. So what was the Granger movement and who were the Knights of Labour? The Granger movement by the mid-1870s grew to about 800,000 members. They were predominantly agricultural workers and farmers. Their aim was to oppose the monopolies of the railroads on grain transport. Railroads could charge as much as they wanted to transport the grain across the country to the ports where it could be sold, and this amount of money was passed on to the farmers, and so they became very agitated. It became very political after 1870, and the group started to campaign and lobby Congress and the Supreme Court. In fact, Munn versus Illinois in 1871 is the best example of this political movement. In Munn versus Illinois, the Supreme Court agreed that private companies can be regulated by the public government, and it was a huge step forward in limiting the power of the railroads in monopolising the grain market. However, by 1880, the membership had dropped to about 100,000 members, so you can say that yes, society was divided, but they were on single issues, and by 1880 this single issue had gone away. It was no longer prevalent. The Knights of Labour are a different group, again exceptionally popular. 20% of all workers were in some way affiliated to it by 1886, and it had 800,000 members by this period. They were a group that promoted social and cultural uplift of working men. They rejected socialism, they rejected anarchism. They demanded an 8-hour day. That was one of their core fundamental beliefs. We can see the best example is the Haymarket riot that starts to lead to its decline. They demand the 8-hour day. 2 people are subsequently charged with creating the chaos that leads to 7 police dead. There were shootings and there was dynamite explosions, and as a result of this, membership dropped to about 100,000. So again, you can see the decline of social. You can see there was clear social divisions in this period with the Granger movement and the Knights of Labour, but both of them started to decline when their single issue neither became relevant or when there was a significant event that challenged or that damaged the movement. So to summarise, the social divisions from 1865 to 1890 were predominantly focused around the big businesses, were predominantly focused around immigration, and women were starting to make a cry for the social change for their group as well. Thank you.